Artificial intelligence is reshaping every part of the enterprise. In insurance, this may mean potentially accelerating underwriting, powering claims automation, and promising levels of predictive analysis previously unseen. Yet, it appears that the same technology is too dangerous to insure, maybe? In this episode of Asia Tech Podcast wants to understand, is an industry built on quantifying the unknown and taking risk, stepping back from new risk frontiers, and frankly, even some old ones? Is AI liability a massive profit opportunity or an existential threat? And how is insurance risk, in quotes, even defined if the system making the decisions is evolving autonomously? To cover these issues and more, we are joined today by Bernhard Kotanko, a senior partner at McKinsey and Asia Pacific Insurance Practice Leader, and Julien, a co-founder and Chief Revenue Officer at Novo AI. Gentlemen, welcome back to the platform. Both of you have been on multiple shows. It's great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Very well. Wonderful to be here.
It's great to have you. It's great to have you both. Okay, let's start with one big question. And Bernhard, I'm going to go to you first. If AI becomes one of the most powerful decision makers inside of enterprises, how long can insurers avoid, or are they even taking responsibility for the risks that AI creates?
Always great that you start with the very big questions that are complex to answer. But let me give it a try. So I think we need to distinguish two different angles. The first one is where are enterprises using AI and certain processes are already insured, let's say corporate liabilities or other areas, and then how does the risk profile change because that insurance client uses AI? And I think there, I would argue that the underlying insurance contract is such that it is typically then it would be a material change, and I think it will be it will lead to different setups of contracts, and I think it is actually an opportunity for insurers to take risk and be a partner for companies as they use AI, and as we see a huge need for cyber insurance of all sorts. I think that will also be a category that will be significant, and it will be complex. But I think insurance, since its invention, has proved that it can actually find formulas or find the risk appetite to also protect against the unknown. And certainly here we talk an unknown. So that I think is one element where enterprises, to your question, use AI. They have insurance policies in place, and how will those be affected? I think then there is a second big dimension where, of course, insurers themselves use a lot of AI. And I think on that one, it's pretty obvious. Of course, the insurer will have to take the responsibility. And my sense is that the insurers are very cognizant of that. And that is part of the reason why many insurers are very careful in terms of how they want to use AI, because they are very mindful of the risks that come with it.
Julien, what do you think?
Yeah, well, if I go back to your questions, a few elements that trigger me. The first thing is like, if AI were to make the decision, right? I don't think that's a good starting point. Like, first, technology is far from being ready for that, and you should definitely not let it make the decision. And we're talking about a business that's about making decisions that are going to impact the life of real people behind, and are not always binary. If you take, I don't know, health insurance, for instance, AI making decision about a treatment plan for patient is something very, very dangerous, right? So and again, like the technology is not ready for that. So I think the first thing is that we shouldn't let AI make the decision anytime soon, at least the important one. And I think the way I see it is AI should really clear the way for insurance company to be able to do better insurance. So get rid of all the tedious tasks, all the repetitive tasks, really clear the way. And so once you have 85% of the job that's done, and where AI actually helps validate claims or validate underwriting much faster, then you can leave the work that requires empathy, that requires decision making, to humans that are real experts and will be able to see the subtleties and see the nuances in what makes a decision, and also sometimes makes calls that are not necessarily exactly following the guideline, but that are just right. Right? Oh, there's a cent too much here to be covered. Well, of course we should cover it. Or here there's a patient that shouldn't be covered, but that's a life-threatening situation, and we're in a position where we can actually do something. And that those are very, very human decisions, and I think that's where it should be. Back to what Bernhard was saying, I think what's interesting is that we see insurance companies use more and more AI, and kind of like fidgeting and iterating and trying to figure out what's the right way to do it. And at the same time, as you mentioned, insurance company kind of like unable today to insure AI, and they look at AI as a big risk. Like those insurance, like the LLM builders are struggling to find an insurer that will cover the risk. And at the same time, that's possibly the biggest game changer that the industry has ever known, right? And so there's an irony in that I think is very, very interesting and interesting to follow.
I want to come back to this idea you said about confirming the underwriting, but I want to follow up with Bernhard first, if you don't mind. You said that the insurance contracts, because of AI and because of some of the risks that it engenders, but also some of the power that it has, that some of the contracts are going to need to change, right? How do you think they will change, in fact, because of this?
So, I mean, I'm not an actuary, and of course, every one of these contracts is different. And here we talk about this is corporate insurance, so it's corporations take certain take certain policies, and here I'm mainly related to those policies that affect their customer relationships. So any form of corporate liabilities, but also supply chain oriented business interruption, for example. What I would say is, with AI, of course, the role of third parties, the big hyperscalers, technology providers, AI model providers, will change those value chains. And I'm, again, every contract is individual, but I would certainly, as an insurer and as a corporate, whether I'm the chief risk officer or whoever negotiates these contracts, I would look at, okay, how do we make sure that the terms and conditions correctly affect all the third parties that are involved, so that we are not then in a big limbo on who is actually liable for what part of risk.
Right. I mean, this is the big question, right? Is if AI, and Julien is suggesting that AI should not make autonomous decisions, but I want to get back to this idea.
I would agree with that, by the way. I think we are at a point where what we call the human in the loop
right.
is very important. And we see a lot of work at McKinsey where we help institutions transform. But so far, the major decisions have always a human in the loop.
Right, but I feel like I see a lot of conversations about companies saying, and not necessarily just in the insurance industry, and not even in insurance, just in the underwriting space, but a lot of companies saying, we want to take these things and have agentic AI kind of going back and forth with each other. And in some cases, removing humans. I don't think this is a great idea either. And in some cases, they're doing this for efficiency purposes, right? To actually save themselves money. If it is making autonomous decisions, right? And then at some point, how do you figure out who's actually liable? Does that make sense?
The problem that's actually been solved for the autonomous vehicle industry, and it took a long time to get there, but eventually the responsibility is a shared one, and it's inputted to where the problem is actually coming from, right? And so I don't have the exact details of it, but like kind of like simplifying, it's if it's a technical issue from the engine or from the sensors and all that, then it should be the constructor, and if it's or like the provider of the AI solutions. If it's a problem with the car, with the with the something that happened on the road, then the responsibility will be somewhere else. And if it's somewhere in the middle, like then, so depending on the type of deficiencies, the liability will go in one place or the other. And so I can see how that could over time get there. And I think it's important as well to make sure that everyone in the value chain is accountable. So it's too easy for LLM providers, and it's kind of like the way they're trying to take at the moment. Like we've seen OpenAI updating their terms and conditions, or kind of like rationalizing them or whatever they call that, but saying like, hey, by the way, this solution is not qualified to give you medical advice. You'll still ask, but if anything goes wrong, we're not responsible for that.
Right, they changed that recently. Sorry, go ahead.
And a few years back, you've seen that with the platforms like YouTube and the like, saying like, hey, we're not responsible for the content on our platform. And Facebook had the same thing. And eventually the regulators said, well, actually, You may not be responsible for the content uploaded on your platform, but you're still responsible for curating it and making sure that it's not coming in front of kids that shouldn't see that, right? And so I think something similar is about to happen in AI, saying like, okay, sure, you're building a model that people will use for that. So either you find a way to prevent them from using it altogether for that, either acknowledge that they can use that and make sure that you put the good guardrails in place so that people will not use it in the wrong way. So that can the problem with that is that it can hinder the innovation and can hinder the capacity to evolve of those models. And so that's where I think human in the loop is the right kind of like intermediary process. But if we need to come to a place where agentic will make the decision, then eventually like provider will have to take some of the responsibility. If only if just to force them to actually think about that and put in place the right features for that.
Bernhard, what do you think?
I think, Julien, you're making a very important point that at the moment, when I look at the state, certainly at all the institutions I'm involved in, it's clear that the final responsibility rests still with the insurer when I look at this. And, we see tremendous opportunity, as you laid out, on augmenting growth through better personalization, through better efficiency, through taking out a lot of the administration. But the final underwriting decisions, the final product recommendations, cannot be, moved to any form of an AI model. Or you can, but then the recommendation, the responsibility for the recommendation still rests with the company or the advisor. Same when we look at efficiency, where we see tremendous potential. And actually, it's one of the big themes because the sector has struggled globally to become more efficient. And I think AI can really be a game changer, and we see it with massive improvements. But also there, end of the day, the humans in the loop are accountable for the decisions that are taken, whether it's on claims or whether it's on other operational decisions.
So I really love making analogies, right? I used to sit on a trading desk, and when I first joined Goldman Sachs, I just want to see if this fits into what you guys are talking about at some level. When I first joined Goldman Sachs, a lot of the trading that we did was manual. So we had an electronic connection to the exchange, but a lot of the stuff we had to do that ended up turning into algorithmic trading started off being manual. So when I got there, we were doing, let's say, $150 to $200 million worth of business and transactions a day. And after installing technology, a lot of machine learning and a lot of algorithms, we were doing $3 or $4 billion of trades a day. So it made us way more efficient. I just want to equate this kind of to underwriting and see what the two of you think about this. Do you see artificial intelligence giving actuaries, again, even if there's a human in the loop, but just the ability to do way more underwriting in the same way we did way more trading because we were able to automate a lot of the sort of rote processes that we were doing and could then spend time thinking about, like, is there a better way to trade? So maybe the actuaries can think, is there a better way to underwrite? Do you see analogies here as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's something we've already worked on at Novo AI. There's a part of underwriting that can be automated right away, and that's not even that complicated and can be done today, like not even in the future, where you take standard criteria, you make a quote instantly, and you automate the entire underwriting process. And if people fit in the right criteria, let's say for motors, for instance, you have a standard car with no modification, and it's part of the coverage that you have. It's pretty easy. Like today, you have a human looking at that and telling you, all right, you need to pay $1,200 for your insurance. There's really no need for human in that loop, where you could just instantly send the quote and say, like, this is how much you need to pay there, done, and in minutes the transaction could be done. And then direct it back to humans where, oh, actually the Michael's car has a lot of accessories and doesn't look like a standard car, or it's a sports car, or simply as well, it could be like, oh, he's driving the latest Lamborghini, which we don't happen to actually insure. And so that also can be automated by saying, like, sorry, Michael, but you'll have to go to a sports car insurer because we don't do that. And so then the only part that will need to be reviewed manually will be the car with like the special accessories, or like the tune car or whatever, right? So that can already be done. And then I think the next stage of that, which we're not there yet, but the more we improve the productivity, whether it's on the claim side, whether it's on the writing side, the way we do that is actually by capturing much more granular data that are also much more accurate. And because of that, you're able to screen 100% of the document and to actually surface new type of signals and to be able to parse that data in a much more efficient way that has ever been done. Today, a lot of the capture of the data is still super manual and still super incomplete. There's a lot of errors in there, and that's what we're working on. So we see that. And once you clear the way of all that, then all of a sudden you're like, all right, cool. Now we can do much more personalized product. We can do much more personalized pricing. We can have dynamic product. We can tell you half of your, half of your contract. Well, actually, would you like to subscribe to something more because you're probably going to need that? And so you can start thinking about how insurance would be much, much, much better and also more accessible, more affordable. Again, it's going to take a few years. But then I think AI is going to play a big role in that.
Yeah, Julien, I think what you're saying is, end of the day, insurance is a highly emotional business, but it's foremost also an information business. And I think where AI and all its variations can be tremendously powerful is processing that information, summarizing that information, getting insight from that information, and therefore accelerating and augmenting the quality of insurance. I think that's where the power lies, both on the growth side as well as on the productivity side. And indeed, the reason I say insurance is an emotional business, it deals with humans or institutions' biggest fears, dreams, and it tries to put numbers on these emotions. And I think where the insurance sector has an opportunity is by becoming more efficient on the administrative part. It can actually indeed spend more time and more leadership effort to go on the emotional customer side and really personalize, and not just personalize the documents, but also personalize the interactions. And again, there AI can be of tremendous help. So I have to say, I've been a consultant to insurance companies now for 25 years. I see this as probably the biggest game changer in certainly in my professional life.
But Bernhard, this is super. Sorry, Julien, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
No, yeah, I just wanted to bounce on that very quickly. Where I was in the room with the people from Qualtrics recently that they were sharing that, and it's kind of abused, but when it's measured, it's more powerful. But clients are 50% more likely to renew if they were happy with their claims experience, and so it's kind of like it's a no-brainer, and that's true for any industry. When you're happy with the service, you renew your contract, right? And same with your telco, same with whatever service. But today the claim experience is so bad, and for pretty much every single insurer. Sorry, I'm not targeting anyone in particular, but it's very clunky. It looks like something that was designed in the 80s because it was.
Because it was,
and all of a sudden you have a way to actually automate all the clunky parts of that, so that people can spend more time. And Bernhard's point is super accurate, where it's an emotional business because you help people when they're most vulnerable moment. Their house has burned, their business is facing huge liabilities and could go bankrupt. You're in a hospital with a broken limb, and people are speaking to you in a language that's not yours. You're in your worst moment, and all of a sudden you're like, what do I do? And you don't have the elements that help you make the right decision. And the insurance is here to protect you and should be here to guide you. But this is not really happening today in today's insurance experience. And so by eliminating all the noise about the admin and the clunky parts, all of a sudden you can have people that are available for that and can tell you like, all right, hey, this is the information that you need to make the correct information. By the way, we're here to help you. We're going to guide you through that. We're going to support you. And we take the role of protector and guardian angel that it's been a bit lost and in the last few decades, I think.
Bernhard, I want to follow up with you on this as well, because I think you make a really good point. If you can take care of all the administrative tasks, and we did the same thing when I was at Goldman, the more we could automate stuff in a way, the better service we could give to our customers, because we had so much more time to think, to watch the market, and to just talk to them in a way that we could do really relaxed, because we weren't spending so much time, pressing buttons and jamming things around. And I'm curious, when you talk to, in your role, when you talk to big insurers, now that they see the possibility of not eliminating, but minimizing the necessity to do these sort of rote tasks again, where are they looking, and how are they looking to improve service if it does free up time for them, so they don't have to do all this sort of admin work on a day-to-day basis? What are they talking about?
And of course, there's been a lot of research on this. First message is everybody is looking. Everybody is carefully tapping into this. There is research from us at McKinsey. There is research, I think, from the MIT and other universities that, you know, 80-90% of the big institutions are actually investing quite heavily in AI. Most are at this stage where they have many pilots, many proofs of concepts, and actually I would say 80% of companies are frustrated that they don't yet see the full financial benefit. And a quote that has been made many times is, you see AI everywhere, just not in the bottom line. I think that is changing dramatically. And I would say that change was in the last 6 to 9 months. It was really, for me, the biggest change of this year, where institutions that are willing and able to really rewire, and this is why McKinsey published a book about it that we even called Rewired, really rewire the combination of workflows, talent, technology, data, and really create a new end-to-end flow, then you see the benefits. You don't see the benefits with individual use cases.
Yeah.
There is this joke that the biggest beneficiary is the dog because he gets an additional walk in a couple of minutes, or you get an additional quick coffee. So the reality is you need to really take an end-to-end lens. So if I take an example, we work with a big agency in Asia, and there is a master agent, there are dozens of sub-agents, and it's really a comprehensive end-to-end reimagination of how an agency channel can function. The productivity gain is tremendous, and the agents love it. And importantly, the customers love it, and the customers still want the human in the loop. That they want the agent. It's not that the humans will disappear, but they want the human as a caretaker, as Julien said. They want it as also that there is more of the primary creativity and the primary care, and the whole administration can be taken away. So some of the highlights of that process, if I look at it, if you're in the conversation with the client and you have questions on the policy, you can ask your co-pilot, okay, what if we change these terms? So what would be a complex process, because it goes to the company, underwriter looks at it, runs the models, comes back, second meeting, third meeting, can now be done on the spot, because you have it all linked into a product configurator, and AI gives you more or less a revised proposal on the spot. That's just one example.
Right.
Personalization. I can craft it to you, Michael, to you, Julien, not just in content, but also in the style you want. If you are a very factual person, I can give you comparisons, charts, models, calculators. If you're a very emotional person, I can give you people like you stories. Now, all these parts existed, but what we now can do with AI and Gen AI, we can integrate it in a way that you really get to a level of personalization that is completely new. And we see it in our work. Conversion ratios significantly up, quality of meetings significantly up, the revision time of proposals coming down, onboarding processes up, drop-off ratios coming down. And we are just at the beginning of this. As I say, I think beginning of the year, we were still in this pilot stages. I think now the leading companies are really doing this end-to-end rewiring. And that really only has happened in the last 6 to 9 months.
To answer that, I think I agree with what Bernhard says. I think what Bernhard's not saying, and because I don't think we see that much, and to your question is like, what do you do with all that time gain, and like how does it impact insurance? I think it's a bit early for those companies because they're still trying to figure out what are the right use cases. Because it's a bit of a blank page moment. We're like, oh, cool, now we have this new technology, and of course, there's a lot of hype around, and a lot of people don't really understand it very well. So, like, oh, can we do this? Can we do that? I've had magical conversation in some meetings where they're like, oh, can you AI do that? Like kind of like I'm getting a wizard out of my hat, and like all of a sudden you can do like weird stuff, right? And I think from a year ago it's evolved into people like are maturing and getting more knowledgeable about that. But there's still a big question about what do you prioritize and where you invest, and should you build it or should you buy it or should you partner with someone? And to Bernhard's point, where is the actual ROI, right? Where do we improve the resilience of the business? And I think today that's the main focus. Like, so let's try and have an impact and actually get our money back and improve the financial viability of the organization. And then once, as you said, like once they have plenty of time, then that will give people ideas, right? Like they'll be like, oh, now I can do my job in one day. What do I do with the 4 others? And so there will be a bit of a lapsing moment where we're like, all right, cool. And now I can start talking to my clients more, and maybe in the first few weeks that will be getting out of work a bit earlier, but then little by little the work creates itself, and they'll find new ways to occupy themselves and maybe sell more and maybe do better product. But that I think that will come next, and it's a bit early to answer what that is exactly. And I can have a lot of ideas on what it should be, but
So this brings up a really good point, and I think both of you actually kind of hinted at this, right? But I'm trying to remember when OpenAI, when ChatGPT, right, was released to the public. Not that it's the only thing out there, not that it's the only thing that matters, but it was one of the earliest things to kind of get released into the wild, right? I don't remember, to be fair, if it was November 21 or November 22, because like time's a flat circle and it just passes too quickly for me.
it's not even 3 years ago.
So that's my point, right? So are we kind of in a place where we can see that there's this massive power, but are our expectations, and not just in insurance, but kind of across the board, just like way too high for the impact of this? And I'm getting back to what you said, Bernhard, where like AI is everywhere except in the bottom line. Are expectations too high for this, at least in the short run? And I'll give you another example from my time at Goldman. When we first started doing algorithmic trading, we were literally writing Perl scripts that were not even connected to our trading systems. We were getting information and then making decisions. It took like 3, 4, 5 years to integrate everything together to where that business grew, like I said, from 200 million to 4 billion. Are we kind of in the same situation now, or is everybody like rushing too fast to get this done, or are expectations too high?
I think there's a common lesson that humanity overestimates the impact in the short term and underestimates the impact in the long term. And that's been a pattern that is not new. I think the pace of that pattern is new. And we see this in the adoption of ChatGPT relative to other innovations that came along. And that is, of course, much, much faster than anything we've seen. What I find interesting is that the complexity, though, is, and people compare it, with the arrival of enterprise resource software and other things. But I think there is one big difference. To make this meaningful, you really need to have this end-to-end transformation, and you really need to especially think about the talent dimension and the journey dimension. Now, these are all fashionable words, but I think it's in this case really, really true. It's not about just automating existing processes. That will not take you there. You need to fundamentally rethink it and reimagine it. And that's where I think the struggle is, and where companies actually take different choices. And some are bolder and start on the growth side, others start on the productivity side, and say, you know what, we use AI or Gen AI to summarize documents or help us on reporting, which is, fairly straightforward and less risky. I think this is where we're going to see the divergence.
Yeah, I want to talk about talent, if you guys don't mind, because this is also really important to me. One of the things we saw, I can't believe I'm talking about this so much today, but one of the things we saw when we were hiring new people to come in, particularly after we were installing technology into our business, was that it made more sense actually to hire people with computer science backgrounds and mathematics backgrounds on a trading desk, whereas before it was just like guys that kind of felt like they knew how the market traded kind of thing. And do you think that, because I agree with you, I do think that like the way talent is inserted into the insurance industry at some level is going to have to become more technologically oriented, but am I wrong there that like at some level there may not be less people, but the people will be completely different from a talent perspective? Is that fair? Julien, what do you think?
I'd love to take this one. I have a bit of a polemical take on that, but actually I've heard many insurers agree with that. So fact is, today AI talent is not flocking to the insurance industry. Like if you want to build something in AI, you don't go work in insurance. You go work in a big tech. If you want to build the architecture of AI, like you could work for Google, for OpenAI. It's going to be exciting, and you're going to be paid like crazily. Or you do like my co-founder, you're a technical co-founder, you want to ship AI product for real, and so you launch your startup, and so that you can do that every single day and work on problems that haven't been solved. If you go work in insurance today, you'll be stuck in a team that doesn't have that many talents, where you're blocked by red tape, where you cannot really test and iterate really freely. And not to say there's no talent in the insurance industry. There's some of the strongest people that I've seen, like, and really cool, but they're quite isolated and they don't have the resources to do what they want. They have a lot of roadblocks. And so we see that in action. We talk to insurance companies that have started to build in AI and they're stuck where a problem that we solved a year and a half, 2 years ago, because the pace is so slow that it's going to take forever to actually build that. So I think there's going to be a bit of a phase where the fastest path to go forward is actually, and to de-risk those projects for the insurance industry, is to partner or build with someone else that has actually the talent and experience and is completely focused on that and doesn't have 10 projects and legacy system to maintain at the same time, where there's no re-question of the budget allocation and the resource and all that. And so that those are either startups or company like McKinsey that are like fully focused on that. And then in a few years from now, where the the AI trends stabilize and the hype has passed, and then we'll see new generation of talent joining the insurance industry that might look very, very different from the one that we see today. But I think there's going to be like a bit of a transition period, and I have no idea how long that is, but it's going to be a few years for sure.
So, Julien, I would challenge that a little bit.
Please do.
What I find fascinating is that you can actually learn the capability of using AI quite quickly. And I see this within McKinsey, where we have trained thousands of our consultants. I mean, I'm not a technology wizard myself, but I've been able to use our own AI agent studio and create my own little AI agents that help me. We see it tremendously in a ton of processes. So I would challenge a little bit this ethos of the AI superstars that are such a scarce resource. I actually think AI is a capability that you can learn quite quickly, often through AI and through AI tools. I mean, take coding. Coding is one of the things that has become a commodity. So I feel that there is an ability to upgrade the talent in insurance, because what insurance talent is good at is they are analytical, they are understanding data. So I think there's a lot of the foundational spirit there, but it of course requires an upgrading and very rapid learning. I would also say that the bigger challenge is the willingness to change traditional workflows. I come back to that. I think that is actually the bigger challenge, is the change management. On the talent capability side, I'm convinced we can upgrade many, because insurance talent is actually pretty good and pretty good foundationally skilled for what is needed here. Same for other knowledge-driven industries, whether it's law firms, consultancies, etc. I think actually I see the pace of transformation quite positively and successful, and it allows, again, more time for clients, more time for what I would call primary creativity, which cannot yet be replaced by AI. So that is the one aspect. And the other one is, there is so much buzz out there that, of course, you can actually get a lot of third parties to work with you. And I will say at surprisingly low cost. Now, some of the technology is extremely expensive and your cloud usage goes up, et cetera, et cetera. So that all costs money. But some of the tools and the implementation is compared to, when I remember a couple of years ago, the cost of a new policy admin system and the hundreds of millions that were pumped into year-long transformation efforts. In that comparison, AI is actually not so expensive from a pure tech deployment. The data usage cost is then expensive.
I think what you're describing, I've been using AI for a while, right? But I think it's something that we've seen with many other technologies before, right? Where it's a typical Dunning-Kruger effect. People start by imagining they can do a lot of stuff and the hype and all that, and then they start using ChatGPT, and all of a sudden everyone thinks they're an AI expert. And we've seen that happening with the cursor and the windsurf, where everyone thought they were a software engineer all of a sudden, and they could code anything and into anything, and then the culture where came where they're like, well, actually we can't really do architecture, and it took a while, right? But it eventually came, and it's going to continue to progress. that doesn't take any value out of it. I'm like you. I've increased my productivity 10x since we have AI, and it's fantastic what you can do. And it's one of the aspects of the technology that excites me. That it's been a long time since we had a technology that can get in the hand of non-tech people and create value. But to actually build solutions that add value to an organization that's so complex as insurance, you do need AI talent, people that actually know what they're doing, and they know how to make the technology generate reliable results, reliable outcomes, and especially when you come into complex ones. And so we see that with insurance company telling us like, oh yeah, but we've tried to process the claims, but it works only 40-50% of the time. But yeah, of course, if you feed your claim to ChatGPT, that's exactly what happens. Now, if you start doing prompt engineering at a slightly different level, where we obviously, you and I not capable of doing that, Bernhard, then that's another level of understanding. And so my co-founder used to work in machine learning at Google before it was even called AI. And the discussion that we have on a daily basis are way more advanced than that. And I haven't seen anyone in the insurance industry get close to that level of knowledge. And the people with this kind of knowledge are not going to the insurance industry unless they can build something on their own. That's my point there. And that will come. And again, not taking any value out of the insurance people. I think they're super capable, and we wouldn't be able to do what we do without collaborating with people that actually understand insurance and have this expertise. But I think the value really comes when you manage to blend the two. And there's a huge underestimation of the complexity of building those solutions in the industry. And again, I think that's what's changed a lot since last year, where no one really knew what it was about. And now today, because everyone has been familiarized with that and they've started to see like how much they can do with it, everyone thinks they're an expert, and they think it's much easier than it actually is. And we'll see a lot of, again, cultural rude awakenings in the next few years, I think. And that's also one of the biggest reasons why I think a lot of people don't see the ROI. Because they invest a lot thinking, oh, that's going to be easy, and then we're going to do that, and we just need to feed that to Gemini, and it's going to be solved. And doesn't work. And then they're like, oh, AI doesn't work. And then you're going to have another period where we stop like you're going to see the investment, because, and I think we're seeing that in some of the studies. I think even one of the McKinsey's one say that, well, we're investing because the ROI is not there. Well, it's not there because you've been doing it wrong, because you've been thinking that, oh, you just needed to use the technology that it is, and that's going to work.
No, you call out the very important part, which is the connectivity, of course, between the insurance sector and the whole suite of providers. I think that is indeed the success formula. It's less about trying to get these superstars work for you, but rather how can you work in a smart way with the various institutions. And we see this at McKinsey with Quantum Black. We are very fortunate to have our own significant AI business, and that is exactly the triangle: client plus Quantum Black plus the more change management, organizational oriented and strategy oriented consultants from McKinsey. So that triangle actually works very well. And then often all the different AI tech partners on top.
Okay, guys, I'm going to let you guys go. This was amazing. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. This is exactly what I wanted. You two are both fabulous. Bernhard and Julien, thank you so much for doing this today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having us, and thanks, Bernhard, for the sparring. Really interesting.